निशान साथ है इतने के कुछ शुमार नहीं हमारे दीन का क़िस्सों पे ही मदार नहीं।
On July 8, 2010, at the age of 15, I went through a life-changing incident which redefined my relationship with God.
I still remember when a couple of days before his incident happened, he was with us and we were actually distributing little tabligh pamphlets that we were preparing and we were going to take out. And I believe this was the day before, and we were having some refreshments and just casually talking, and we couldn't have imagined that the very next morning something as tragic would take place.
Even up until the night before, there was not a single indication or a sign of anything happening. And the next morning I woke up with excruciating pain all over my body. I had the worst headache I've had in my life. It was unlike any other pain I'd ever experienced. I got off the bed and I had to crawl towards my parents' bedroom to knock on the door and ask for help.
तो फसी जो है वो अचानक अपने कमरे से उठ के आया तो उसने गर्दन पे हाथ रखा हुआ था और उसने बताया कि उसको बहुत ज़्यादा जो है ना वो तकलीफ़ हो रही है। मैंने उससे एक दो बातें पूछने की कोशिश की तो वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा उस वक्त जो है ना वो तकलीफ़ में था। ज़ाहिर है हम सब जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा परेशान हुए। तो इसी दौरान में जस्ट 1-2 मिनट के अंदर ही हमने जो है वो 911 पे कॉल कर दी और तकरीबन 10 से 12 मिनट के अंदर अंदर एम्बुलेंस जो है वो वहाँ पे पहुँच गई।
By the time the ambulance came, my condition had gotten much worse within a matter of few minutes. It felt like my life was being just sucked out of me. I was becoming unresponsive by the minute, and I lost the ability to speak, to move, to be able to communicate what I was going through.
तो उसको ले जाके उन्होंने एम्बुलेंस में जो है ना वो अंदर शिफ्ट किया है उन्होंने और उसके सारे वाइटल साइंस वगैरह उन्होंने जो है ना वो चेक करने शुरू किए हैं। तो उस दौरान में मैंने देखा कि फसी की सांसें जो है ना वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा उखड़ रही थी। तो उन्होंने उस दौरान में उसको फसी को ऑक्सीजन लगा दी है। तो वो उससे कुछ बातें पूछ रहे थे कि आप बताएं आपको क्या हो रहा है। लेकिन उसी दौरान में जबकि उसको अंदर शिफ्ट किया था उन्होंने, उसके तकरीबन 1 या 2 मिनट के बाद उसने बोलना बंद कर दिया। तो उसके मुंह से मैंने देखा, मैं बिल्कुल साथ ही बैठा हुआ था, कि उसके सिर्फ जो है ना वो हवा या सांस ही आ रही थी, तो अल्फाज अदा नहीं हो रहे थे। तो उन्होंने उसको फिर जो है ना वो ऑक्सीजन का लेवल उन्होंने दोबारा चेक किया तो उन्होंने मुझे बताया कि वो इसको चिल्ड्रन हॉस्पिटल में जो है ना वो लेके जा रहे हैं।
The next morning when I woke up, I received a call, and I was actually supposed to potentially see Fasih later in the day. I remember trying to digest and trying to fathom what was going on, and I told my family, and we all became we turned towards God very emotionally, and we started praying for him.
हमें सबसे पहले यही ख्याल था कि हमने खलीफा वक्त को ख़त लिखना है, उनको दुआ के लिए कहना है। उनको ख़तूत लिखना शुरू हो गए और दुआएं करते रहे। और फिर उसके बाद ये था कि तसल्ली होगी, हजूर को दुआ के लिए कह दिया तो एक दिल को तसल्ली थी, इत्मीनान था।
तो बेसिकली उस वक्त यही था, अल्लाह ताला पे यही तवक्कुल था कि जो ये तकलीफ़ है, ये आजमाइश है, अल्लाह ताला ने दी है और वही अपने फ़ज़ल से इसको जो है ना वो टालने वाला है। और नमाज़ों में भी हम लोग जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा ज़ाहिर है उसके लिए दुआएं कर रहे थे। उसकी कंडीशन ही इस किस्म की थी कि हमें कुछ पता नहीं चल रहा था कि ये क्या हुआ है इसके साथ।
I woke up 3 days later and I was completely paralyzed from the neck below. I was on the ventilator and I was very unresponsive and couldn't move or talk or breathe on my own. Even at that point, the doctors didn't know what had happened to me. And it wasn't until they did an MRI where they found out that there was an abnormal vein wrapped around my spinal cord which had bursted, leading to an internal bleeding and damage to my spinal cord. So they decided to do a surgery to remove that vein. And this was a very critical surgery because there was a lot of risk involved and a threat of damaging the spinal cord even further. And of course, my family and we all resorted to prayers and asked God for His help. And Alhamdulillah, the surgery was successful.
2-3 दिन तो जैसे वो अनकॉन्शियस रहा बिल्कुल, और फिर जब उसको होश भी आई तो सबसे पहले उसने अल्लाह के फ़ज़ल से, मैं कहती हूँ अल्लाह का फ़ज़ल और एहसान है कि उसने नमाज के टाइमिंग्स का, क्योंकि उसको अंदाज़ा नहीं था दिन है रात है, अभी बात भी नहीं कर सकता था, उसकी आवाज़ हम सुन नहीं सकते थे, लेकिन उसने इशारों से जो है हमें बताने की ये कोशिश की कि मुझे पता ही नहीं कि टाइम क्या है नमाज का.
Even though I was still in a critical condition and in the ICU, my initial reaction was that first I was very grateful to be alive. I couldn't move at all, but I would just lie there and just looking up at the ceiling, just talking to God. I realized how many things that we take for granted. So I just told God, I'm so sorry that it took me this incident to realize and appreciate all the things that we take for granted. And not just the ability to move our limbs, but also the ability to eat, to be able to communicate, to express what we are feeling. And when someone else has to brush your teeth, that is a very humbling experience. Because just a few days earlier, I was in the park playing soccer. I was in the gym playing basketball. I was this, athletic, physically active, in my youth, teenager that at times may have felt invincible.
डॉक्टरों ने एक दिन मीटिंग कॉल की और उसमें उन्होंने मुझे और मेरी वाइफ को बुलाया और मुझे बताया कि जो फसी की अभी कंडीशन है, तो हम आपको ये बता रहे हैं कि ये बाकी आइंदा आने वाली जितनी ज़िंदगी है, ऑक्सीजन का सिलेंडर इसके साथ रहेगा और हो सकता है कि फसी जो है वो बोल भी ना पाए, शायद वो चंद जुमले अदा कर सके, या हो सकता है कि बिल्कुल बोल ना पाए और ये बिल्कुल भी जो है ना वो चल नहीं सकेगा. तो ज़ाहिर है आप समझ सकते हैं कि वालिदैन के लिए तो ये बहुत ज़्यादा तकलीफ़ और परेशानी वाली बात थी. तो बहरहाल मैंने उनको जो है वो इधर जवाब दिया, या ये समझें कि बेसाख्ता मेरे मुंह से निकला कि ये तो आप लोगों की राय है. डॉक्टर्स को मैंने कहा, वहाँ पे तकरीबन मैं और मेरी वाइफ थे और कोई 7 के करीब वो अफराद थे, जिनमें से उनका जो 3 मेजर डॉक्टर थे और बाकी जो यूनिट में केयर वगैरह करते हैं वो लोग थे. तो मैंने उन्हें कहा कि ये तो आपके मुंह की कही हुई बात है, तो होना तो वो है जो अल्लाह ताला ने, खुदा ताला ने चाहना. तो वो बड़ी हैरत से, शायद वो एक्सपेक्ट ना कर रहे हों कि मैं ये इस तरह से ये बात उनके लिए कहूँगा.
डॉक्टर्स की तरफ से कोई तसल्ली नहीं थी, लेकिन उस कादिर खुदा की तरफ से हमें तसल्ली थी कि अल्लाह ने सुनना है इंशाअल्लाह ताला. वो मतलब हाकिम है, वो बादशाह है, हर चीज़ पे कादिर है, वो तो सब कुछ कर सकता है, तो यकीनन उसके लिए तो कोई मुश्किल काम नहीं है.
The way he endeavored after the incident, where he started off in a coma, and those were very scary days, but then his recovery at first was very slow. We had no idea if he'd ever be able to walk again, let alone get up. And the way he demonstrated patience and his willpower at that time was very motivating for me.
खुदा ताला का ऐसा फ़ज़ल हुआ कि फसी ने उसी दौरान में जो है वो पहले आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बोलना स्टार्ट किया. उसके बाद ये लंबे ड्यूरेशन के लिए जो है वो बात करने लगा. ऑक्सीजन का जो ऑक्सीजन थी वो बिल्कुल इससे हट गई.
3 weeks in, I started regaining some movement in my left hand. And just witnessing that was very emotional because I knew that I didn't rely on the doctors, and relying on God had proved my faith.
जो उस बच्चे की हालत थी, उसकी ज़िंदगी एक किस्म की जैसे सांसें ख़त्म हो गई थी। उसकी ज़िंदगी अल्लाह ताला ने हमारी दुआओं को सुना। खलीफा वक्त की सबसे पहली बात है कि दुआओं को सुना। खलीफा वक्त की दुआओं की बदौलत, इस जमात की बाबरकत निज़ाम से वाबस्तगी की बदौलत अल्लाह ताला ने हमारी दुआओं को सुना, अहबाब जमात की दुआओं को सुना, हमारे रिश्तेदारों की दुआओं को सुना। और ये सब महज़ और महज़ मैं ये समझती हूँ कि ये बाबरकत जमात से जो हमारी वाबस्तगी है, उसी के नतीजे में हमें ये जो है नेमतें मिली, ये फ़ज़ल मिले।
A year after my injury, I was with my doctor and he asked me what my goals were. And I just said, "What do you mean? What are my goals? I want to be able to walk again." And he looked at me and he said, "I hate to break it to you, but that's probably never going to happen. So you should pick something more realistic." But rather than bringing me down or making me hopeless, it actually motivated me even more.
इस आज़माइश के बाद तो मैं ये समझती हूँ कि उसने उस वक़्त अपने आप को इतना बेबस नहीं समझा, बेबस नहीं किया कि मैं अब जी इस आज़माइश में आ गया हूँ, मैं तो कुछ कर नहीं सकता। माशाल्लाह उसकी विल पावर बहुत ही हमसे ज़्यादा थी। हम पेरेंट्स घबरा जाते थे, लेकिन वो नहीं घबराता था, वो हमें तसल्ली देता था।
What kept me going was firstly the comfort that I was getting through my prayers. Every time I would get up from a long sajda, I'd feel that God was on the other side listening to me. And this was extremely reassuring because it made me feel that I had nothing to worry at all. That if God was to give one commandment, everything could change at a moment's notice. I also felt the comfort when I would see dreams where I saw myself walking and running. And a lot of times I would wake up just very emotional because this was God's way of communicating with me.
ज़िंदगी जो है ना, इसी का नाम है। कहीं दुख है, कहीं सुख है, आज़माइशें आती रहती हैं। और माँ बाप के लिए यकीनन ये मुश्किल है कि उनकी अगर औलाद पे कोई ऐसी तकलीफ़ आ जाए, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है। लेकिन वही बात है कि अल्लाह ताला जब तकलीफ़ों में डालता है तो अल्लाह ताला आसानियाँ भी करता है। बस एक यकीन कामिल होना चाहिए अल्लाह ताला पे कि अल्लाह ताला की ज़ात है, वो ज़िंदा खुदा है।
I studied the commentary of the promised Messiah salam on the philosophy of trials. And that really helped me gain a better understanding of hardships and suffering and the importance and the significance of going through something like that. And it helped me understand that for any type of progress, you have to go through some sort of difficulty. And in my case, the progress that I was receiving was a spiritual growth in the form of my relationship with God.
I remember when we had the honor of going on that Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya Canada trip to the United Kingdom, where we helped wind up the Jalsa Salana United Kingdom. Fasih expressed, for the first time in my life, I'd heard him say that, please pray that I'm able to recover so I too can, make these kinds of trips. So this was very moving for me because I had never heard him say anything like that. And the one time he did, it related to an act of service for God only. And I think that came from his recognition that, Allah is who has, even given him a life beyond the injury. And he was just always grateful for whatever the situation was.
Reflecting back on my trial and my journey, I've realized that there are so many things that I've gained from this. And one of them is how because I've been so much more involved in prayers and trying to strengthen my relationship with God, it has helped me detach myself from the worldly and materialistic things. And it has also led me to be more involved in service to Jamaat.
You know, Fasih, despite the challenges and trials he went through, he continued living. He continued very optimistically looking towards the future, and he went through his education.
I did my high school, I did a program in graphics design, and then I presented myself for Waqf. And Alhamdulillah, I now get to serve as a Waqf-e-Zindagi in MTA International. So this has been a huge blessing in my life. At the same time, I was writing a lot of letters to Hazur and getting a lot of responses from him. And so this really helped my relationship with Khilafat as well. And one of the memorable moments in my life was when Hazur visited in 2016. He remembered meeting me from 3 years ago in 2013, and he asked about my surgery that had happened at that time. It made me realize how fortunate we are that Hazur members MDs from all around the world, and it helped me reflect how lucky I am to be a part of this divine community.
He would always have a very good attitude, always a smile on his face, never complained about it. In my day-to-day life, I find myself sometimes reevaluating, maybe the small challenges that we might have day-to-day. But I always think back to Fasih and certain things he has told me. And I think all of that comes from Allah Himself. Patience, after all, does come from God Himself. And it's really nice having a friend who kind of manifests those very important qualities that end up being a way that we all get inspired.
Prayers are really important, but it is also very important to take action as well. And I've put in a lot of effort in my physio and in my exercises and continue to do so to this day. When you do the action along with prayers, God blesses those actions. So alhamdulillah, now I can take care of myself and do my daily tasks. They say that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I feel that every single thing that I've gone through during this experience has defined the way I am and shaped me into the person I am today. And I'm very grateful for that. Everyone has their own battle. We all have our own struggles. We all have our own wheelchair. And when God says that no soul shall be burned beyond their capacity, I find that to be very true, because when God tries you, He also provides you with the tools to overcome those adversities.